Hello again, Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 16 here for Week 13 Power Rankings. As always, we start at the bottom. Blake Lovell, our number 16 team, is
I know you're
Mississippi
shocked,
State.
Chris. Mississippi
I'm
State.
shocked. They've been here for like 10 weeks in a row. Had an off week. Don't know what else to say. Let's go to 15.
There you go. Wow, that was
Kentucky,
about as quick as it gets. 15 Kentucky. There you go.
which mauled Murray State. What did we learn there?
Did we
Nothing.
really learn a whole lot other than Mark Stoops saying he wasn't going to retire at the end of the year or step down or whatever? I think that was about it from the past week for the Kentucky football program.
Well, 2 weeks ago, we learned that Kentucky could not beat number 14, which is the Auburn Tigers, which also got a mauling over the weekend, proving very little. Auburn now has got to get wins over Texas A&M and Alabama to go to a bowl.
Auburn playing the spoiler role. They've done that before, Chris. They've been a spoiler before.
This is true.
We'll see if they can do that the next couple weeks. Would certainly ruin some big time chances for both of those teams, both SEC and college football playoff. There, number 13 is Oklahoma. The Sooners, Chris, also get to play spoiler potentially this week against Alabama in Norman.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll win, but the defense is good enough where they could keep that interesting. I do think you want to see some improvement at quarterback. Alabama has been iffy on defense at times, although that's gotten a lot better. I think Oklahoma, that's going to be probably too much to bite off. But keep an eye just in case they're able to keep it interesting for about 3 quarters. And let's go on to number 12, the Arkansas Razorbacks, who played within 10 points at Texas, but offense didn't show up the way it needed to show up for the Razorbacks to get a win.
What do you think's going to happen there?
They got Louisiana Tech, which they'll win, and Missouri. I think if they win these last 2, it feels a lot different, and that's doable.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, they can win these last. I mean, Missouri will be tough on the road, but yeah, I mean, if they can win these last 2, like you said, maybe you finish with a little momentum. But if you got the billboards going up and all that, which was the big talk before the game, yeah, we'll see.
Do you think that's fair? Because I think Sam Pittman, in all seriousness, has done a solid job there.
Chase and I talked about it on the reaction show on Saturday. I think the thing that'll frustrate fans, not just when you lose games, but when you lose games at home, the way that they lost games at home, blown out LSU, Ole Miss, Texas game was close, but I just think that's where things get interesting with fans. So, I don't know.
We're going to talk about another coach who's been on the hot seat. Before we do that, reminder, we're brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the latest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Number 11 is the Florida Gators, which beat LSU with one-legged DJ Lagway, despite having the ball for 18 minutes.
We pointed that out. This is so wild to look at if you look at that game and just look at the box score, my goodness, you'd have thought LSU was in control there, but that was not the case. Florida wins it by double digits there, and yeah, I mean, again, we talk about kind of the changing, how quickly things can change if you're a coach in the SEC. And like for Billy Napier, he gets the vote of confidence. They get blown out of Texas. Now they come back home. They beat LSU. You get a little more momentum back now. So, yeah, Gators all the way up here at 11, and at least there's been progress made. I don't know if it's the progress that every Florida fan wants just yet, Chris, but at least there's progress. So,
well, look, you beat Florida State to end the season. You go to a bowl. We said before the season against that schedule, just getting to a bowl to me feels like progress. Now that they did it with injuries to their main 2 quarterbacks at different times, to me, I know it's not what they're used to. I'm not trying to insult Florida, but let's be real. Look at the schedule they played and those injuries. I don't think it's been a bad year if you end it that way.
Yep. Agreed. All right. What about Missouri? What do you think their fans are thinking right now? They're at 10 in our power rankings this week. I mean, again, what hopes they had of a playoff spot are gone. But what do you think? I mean, it's still like I see some fans who are just like frustrated, but I think you remember where the program was a couple years ago. Come
Yeah.
off of what they did last year. This year, they're going to win. Finish with what? Probably good chance to finish with what? 9 wins, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. But
Look, they went and came that close to beating probably one of the hottest 2 or 3 teams in the country in their backyard. I think the problem is the schedules just didn't allow for a lot of big wins, and they lost most of those opportunities. So I get it, but 9-3 from Missouri, which I think is where they could end up, is a nice season. So we'll see where it goes from there.
This team's also had a nice season. I know they're coming off the disappointing loss to South Carolina a couple weeks ago, but Vanderbilt at 9, and now Chase and I, Chris, we're talking about. And wait, let's just go ahead and tie this in because I think this is a great idea just to tie these two in since they play each other this week. LSU's at 8, and we were talking about. Can you imagine? Think about all the Brian Kelly stuff that's being talked about now. If Diego Pavia leads the Commodores into Baton Rouge, wins a night game in Death Valley, can you imagine the response?
I really wonder about LSU. I really do, because you're about to match 2 teams up. One of them's got a lot to play for, and I question what LSU's got to play for. And seeing them giving up sacks like that, which like there's a lot of ways I thought LSU could have lost that game. That was not even anywhere close to the list of ways I imagined it. But right, yes, I mean if they beat, if Vanderbilt goes and beats them, holy cow, the radio business down there will be booming next week.
I'm going to just give you a quick exercise here, okay? We can spend 30 seconds on it, and I'm not asking it. You're probably going to be like, I'd like to think more about this, but we're just going to do quick reaction to this. If you had to rank the top 5 hottest coaching seats in the SEC right now, where does Brian Kelly rank on that list? Because I'm going to assume you've got Mark Stoops on there, Sam Pittman we talked about, Napier, maybe not like right this second, but like if you're looking ahead and you're like predicting the future here, where is Brian Kelly on that list?
I mean, right now, I don't think there's a fan base any angrier with their coach at this moment than him. But I will also say Brian Kelly's track record has been tremendous. He's won everywhere he's been. You see LSU will have little dips like this, right? That lost a Heisman quarterback last year. I can defend it a little bit. Florida's not a bad team. Now, that is no consolation to LSU fans. And the fit has been a question from the beginning.
First time since 2016, Brian Kelly has not won 10 or more games as a head coach.
Yeah.
So
to me, that's louder than a losing streak, but that's not the way the world works.
Exactly. All right, number 7 is Texas A&M. The Aggies, as we said, are another team in an interesting spot here. As we start to look at playoff scenarios and SEC championship scenarios, we know the big game against Texas is coming up next week, but got to win this week for that one to matter, of course, to that extent.
Yeah. Like, Texas A&M's not really getting talked about in the playoff a lot right now, but, man, went out, and obviously you're in because you get the auto bid. But that's a team that could really play spoiler coming up. So,
yeah. Again, at Auburn, that's just one of those games. I'm sure if you're a Texas A&M fan this week, you're like, ooh. You don't love it necessarily, even though Auburn has struggled. Number 6, Chris, the South Carolina Gamecocks. My goodness.
I think if you're ranking teams and how well they're playing right now, they're higher than that even.
Hard to argue against that. Yeah. And look, hey, you guys did the video. The wild playoff scenario for South Carolina. There are some things falling towards that, as people were pointing out in the reaction thing on Saturday night. It's still a very big long shot. I'm curious what the probabilities are in terms of percentages, but stranger things have happened, I suppose, even though they have what the committee seems to be looking at, and that's that 3rd loss right now. So,
did you see the thing about the stadium actually registered on the Richter scale when Rocket Sanders scored that touchdown?
Yeah, I could see that. They were even talking about it on commentary. Like, I don't even remember who
Yeah.
the play-by-play
They
was.
said
But
it
yeah,
live. They said the stadium's
yeah.
shaking. And I don't I don't know that I believed it, and then there was the
Hey,
evidence.
Beamer ball in November, man. This is what they do. So,
Why does everybody count them out in October every year? I don't understand that. They do this every single year under Shane Beamer.
well, just you want more consistency. But I mean, we talked about it too. Like on Saturday, it's like think about the LSU game, right? I mean, man, if you just think back to the conversation we're having right now, if they just find a way to win that game,
Yeah.
and I mean they're right there. Then I mean we're talking about them in the higher up in the playoff conversation. All right, to the top five we go. Tennessee drops to 5 here, Chris, after the loss at Georgia, and I know everyone's kind of doing their math to figure out where Tennessee's going to fall in the college football playoff. But yeah, I think definitely disappointing for Tennessee fans based on how they started that game, and then I know people bring up the penalties and different stuff like that, but I think there were also some fans, at least there were in the chat on Saturday night, that were equally frustrated with Josh Heupel based on how that game played out.
Yeah, well, look, you called a hot Carson back. We'll get to that in just a minute. But the problem for them at this point is I think this is where their schedule can really weigh them down. Because they beat UTEP next week, that does nothing. You beat Vanderbilt and Nashville, that's helpful, but I don't know. That loss to Arkansas may be the thing that in the season just crippled them and kept them out of the playoffs. I think right now that you start looking at schedules of some of the other teams and abilities to bank big wins. Yeah, that's what's going to hurt Tennessee, I'm afraid.
Ole Miss at number 4. The Rebels kind of sitting in a spot here, and like we said, they're another team that curious to see how they finish the season here, which obviously have a chance to finish strong. But yeah, I mean, again, this is that group of teams where you're starting to do all the math and figure out how this is going to play out in terms of playoff possibilities and everything with them. So.
Well, you can say the same thing that you said about Tennessee about the schedule. The difference between Tennessee and Ole Miss is that win at South Carolina looks really, really big right now.
Yeah. Definitely looks a lot better. Again, based on the way South Carolina's playing, and mentioned Florida trying to play the spoiler against Ole Miss this week, and then Ole Miss hosts Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl there to finish things off. But all right, Georgia, we said got the big win against Tennessee. They're here in the 3rd spot. And yeah, Chris, I mean, we talked about it like going to the game. It was hard to see Georgia losing a 3rd game, even though Tennessee started off well, and you're starting to wonder at that point. But good Carson Beck is pretty good. And now, again, the Bulldogs are sitting here in this jumbled mess of teams in this group in the SEC.
Yeah, Georgia has got the best resume at this point. A win at Texas, beat Tennessee, win over Clemson neutral site, win over Florida neutral site. Auburn at Kentucky are decent wins too. Only 2 losses at Alabama, at Ole Miss. I mean, here's the thing if you're Georgia, Blake. Carson Beck has not been really good all season until that game. And you're sitting here, if we pick the playoffs today, you're in. I don't know if that's a glass half empty, glass half full scenario, but it feels like the latter to me.
Well, Alabama's at 2, which of course means Texas is at 1. But thoughts on Alabama here, as again they get ready to try to finish their season strong, and like we said, it's just you got to say a lot about these teams at top, and I think you guys will probably do something on the playoff reaction. What we see tomorrow night, the rankings and all that, but probably not much of a surprise to see Alabama sitting here at the number 2 spot based on everything.
Yeah, that defense really starting to play well. That was the issue earlier in the season. Jalen Milroe gets all the headlines, but that's the thing that makes them dangerous right now. You work backwards. They give up 7 points to Mercer, which is a pretty good FCS team, give up 13 to LSU and Baton Rouge, and then shut out Missouri the week before that.
Yep.
They defend like that, they may win the whole thing.
Yep. At Oklahoma versus Auburn to finish the season for the Tide. So, and then of course we said Texas is at 1. Oh, Chris, everybody's been certainly talking about Texas's resume, and I've even seen people doing mock playoff rankings and thinking that Texas doesn't even belong in the top, whatever. But I mean, this is kind of where they sit in the SEC, and like we mentioned, they've got Kentucky this weekend, and they've got the big game against A&M, so they can, win out, and we know what that means for Texas. They'll be sitting in a great spot, both in terms of getting the SEC championship game and in the college football playoff rankings.
I mean, Texas's best win is probably at Arkansas.
Yeah.
Maybe at Michigan. Could be Oklahoma at a neutral site. I mean, there's a point there. The thing with them is going to be, it's the how good do you think they are versus what's their resume, because the resume is not great. So, although they got some solid wins there, the Florida win's a solid win, Vandy's a solid win. I think the middle part of the resume gets ignored a little bit, but ultimately, look, if they win this whole thing, they're going to be in there obviously because they'll get the bye. But what is going to be interesting is if they drop that A&M game. Mm-hmm. I think everybody would say Texas is one of the best 12 teams in the country. Tennessee and Texas are probably going to do a lot of watching of what each other one does, because I'm not sure, a 2-loss team for either of them with the resume puts them in questionable territory.
Yep. Like you said, that A&M game is going to be huge. Assuming they beat Kentucky on Saturday, then, that A&M game becomes significant, especially if they were to lose it, like you said, because then I think that discussion is only going to amplify in terms of their resume. So there you go. Power rankings.
We got them in basketball too. We got all kinds of content this week. We got predictions coming up. We got reactions coming up on Saturday nights. Usually start those 9:30 Central after games. So if you have not hit the subscribe button and enable your notifications, please do so you can catch our content. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16 presented by BetOnline.